Madam,
I think somebody ended the meeting.
What happened? I'm extremely sorry, sir. We are extremely sorry.
That's okay. One of the host, I don't know who, ended the meeting. So I think we might have to wait for some time before we.
Yes, yes.
Can you give me the sharing option?
yes, sir. I'm making you the host. I'm making you the co-host.
Ishu, sir, meanwhile, check who all have you made co-host as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Is my slides visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Only the slides, right? Not the other things.
No.
Okay. Should we wait or can I continue?
So 2 minutes. I'll drop the message in the groups. They will join. Madhu, madam,
Sir.
I'm making you a host for a while.
Okay, okay, sir.
I think we have 160 people. So let me get started. So it's
Yes.
any repeat of the previous slide. So as I told you earlier, design thinking is about three things. It's about invention, it's about empathy, it's about iteration. So when we talk about empathy, it's people-centric. It's about people. When we talk about invention, it's about technology. When we talk about iteration, it's about business. So when we
Participants, please mute yourself.
So when we talk about empathy, it's about people. So what do we mean by people? People means how do you make something desirable for somebody to buy? Very, very important, right? Two products might be similar, but there will be one product which is more desirable than the other. For example, if an Apple phone is there in front of you, you don't really look at the functional spec of this product. You try to look at, it just makes you desirable, right? I mean, this applies to the cars, it applies to the jewelry, it applies to the clothes we wear, many, many things. So empathy is about trying to make it more desirable, make it more usable, make it more customer experience friendly. So empathy is all about people centricity. When we talk about invention, we are talking about technology here. Is it feasible or not? Which means you're trying to come out with a solution. Let's say you come out with a solution and say this works only on Apple iOS and not on Android. In India, majority of the people actually are on Android. So your solution will not work in India. So you need to understand what is the feasibility of the solution, what you're putting, and what is the technical viability of this product, which means if you try to come out with an invention, which is very difficult for me to use, right? And technically I need to be challenged. If I need to be an expert to use it, then there's no way this product will work. So it's very, very important to understand these things and ask these questions and make sure that the invention I am doing is technology centric, but at the same time, focus on feasibility and technical viability. Very, very important to look at. And finally, when it comes to business iteration, we are talking about business here. Is it viable or not? does it have business sensibility or not? Because a lot of times there are fantastic problems which people wanted, people desire, and we already have a technology to solve it, but business wise, it just doesn't make sense. So it's very, very important to make sure that all three things are taken into consideration before we dive deeper into the process. So this process of innovation is called as experience innovation. The difference between regular innovation and experience innovation is experience innovation is a terminology which we use where design thinking process is applied to innovation. And in experience innovation, apart from in a regular innovation, we talk about invention and iteration. But when we talk about experience innovation, we talk about invention, iteration. With that, we put people in the center. It's about people. So remember these three things, right? So whenever we talk about design thinking in innovation, it has to be around people, which means you're trying to make it desirable. You're talking about business to make sure that it's viable, and technical to make it feasible. So these are the three words which you need to remember. It's around people, business, and technical, which is around desirability, viability, and feasibility. When these three things merge, the intersection of these three things is where the innovation experience comes. The innovation experience is a derived term wherein design thinking process is applied for any innovation. So in a nutshell, design thinking is a set of tools, techniques, and mindset. As I told you, any one of us can be a design thinking specialist if we understand the tools, if we understand the techniques, and if we have the right mindset. When I say right mindset, we need to have a growth mindset. You cannot have a fixed mindset. You cannot say, this is, I have 25 years of experience, I know it. This is how it is done. If you, the moment you say that, you have a fixed mindset. If you are open to it and say, here is a MBA graduate who's first year, who's actually challenging me on the process I'm thinking, let me explore more, then you have a growth mindset. That's the difference between the mindsets, right? So it's very, very important to be an expert in design thinking. Not only that you have the right tools and techniques, but you need to have a growth mindset. You need to be open for inputs. You need to be open to hear the user. So listening skills becomes very, very important in design thinking. Design thinking definitely implies innovation quotient. Better application of design thinking betters the innovation quotient. Design thinking is not just for inventors of new products, or not something which is startups can use. Design thinking can be used by every one of us of any sizes, different industries, verticals, and regions. It is also a problem-solving technique for solving customer needs, identifying and developing new opportunities, improving internal processes and systems, and even change the organization's culture and structure. So innovation design thinking is a balance between thinking and doing. So it is not just thinking, but also doing. So when you combine this thinking and doing together, that's when the experience innovation happens. So I hope you all understand the definition of design thinking. So now if somebody asks you, what is design thinking? These are the, what you see on the right side is what should come to your mind. It's, first of all, it is human-centered. And the second is it tries to find out the real needs of the user, because most of the times user actually doesn't say the need. He will say what he sees. And sometimes he cannot be articulate. Sometimes he doesn't have the right language or the terminologies which actually helps him come out with the right definition of what he really wants. So it's very, very important for you to do an interview, understand what the user wants, and do the needs analysis. It is around interviewing and empathy building. Unless you connect with the user, unless you wear his shoes and talk to that person, he or she will never tell you the real need. So it's, interviewing skills is very, very important in the design process. It's about making observations. You need to have a high sense of observation and create insights from the answers the user might be giving. It's very, very important to have the observation skills here. You need to really understand a point of view, because each one of your user will say things differently. So what's the real definition of a point of view? You need to understand that. Once you understand these things from the user, you get into the ideation phase. Once the ideation phase is done, you start developing and testing prototypes, and also do minimal viable product, which we call it as MVP. And then you rework on the whole thing. So it's not a linear process. It's not step-by-step process. After ideation, you can go back to finding need also. After doing a MVP, you can go back to interviewing also. So it's not a lateral process. It is more a cyclic process. So that's something which you all have to remember. So why are we talking about design thinking right now? I mean, if this is something, and people have been using it for a long time, why are we talking about design thinking right now? Mainly because one thing you need to understand is one thing which you need to understand is the customer, right? So if you look at the customer today, the customer is moving towards, the whole market is moving towards experience economy. So what is this experience economy? If you really look at any product or services you're talking about today, they talk, the product companies, the service companies talk primarily on the experiences which they offer, right? So initially, if the person gets the goods or commodities, he or she would have been very, very happy. The next was service economy, which was more on delivery. If I'm ordering something and I'm getting it on time, I'm perfectly fine. I don't really care about the packaging. I don't really care about the experience I have while buying or acquiring this product. So that was more of a service economy. And from service economy, we have moved up right now to experience economy. Whether it's a simple haircut today, right? Why a salon can charge you 800 rupees for a haircut, and when a regular salon still charges 120 rupees for a haircut? Primarily because the regular salons around your houses are focusing on delivery or goods kind of system, which is more around service economy. But the better ones, what you see in the CBD areas, give you an experience. When you go inside the salons, it's not just about a haircut. They just give you a fantastic experience of the whole 2 hours you spend there. So that's the reason why you pay more, and the margins also better. So today the customers have moved towards experience economy, and customers have got used to experience economy right now. So it's very, very important to understand this is where you play, because this is where the margins are. And design thinking helps you go towards experience economy much faster. And a good example would be this, right? If you're looking at commodities, coffee bean shops is the best solution. If you're just looking at goods, then packaged coffee is the best solution, where you go to the coffee shop and take a half a kg coffee, come back home, do the filter and drink the coffee. That's your own product. Then it becomes the services coffee, which is more like a brewed coffees, which is Darshini coffees, right? You pay 20 rupees for a coffee, you get a brewed coffee, and it's about the delivery right now. It's about the service which you're getting. Starbucks coffee is 200 rupees. Now it's the same bean which is being used. It's the same coffee, it's the same filter. You're paying more because they give you an experience. You go to Starbucks not to drink coffee, right? You go to Starbucks because you want an experience. Coffee Day also tried to mimic the same model. You go to Coffee Day, and the tagline of Coffee Day is a lot can happen over a cup of coffee. Now, what do you mean by that? It's an experience which they're giving, right? And a lot of details have been given to that. So that's the reason why if you go to a Coffee Day, sit for an hour and don't order a coffee, they don't disturb you. But you go to a Darshini and sit there and don't order coffee, the guy will come and ask you to leave. The difference is the Coffee Day works on experience economy, the Darshanis work on service economy. So it's quite different. Now, to become a master in experience economy, it's very, very important for you to understand the user, and that's where the design thinking comes. Second reason why design thinking is important today is because the technology has been democratized right now. Whether you are a student, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a professor, whether you are a common man, technology is available to all of us at the same level. There is no longer technology democracy has already happened in the technology, right? 5G phones, when it comes, every one of us is going to have it. Every one of us have internet on the phones. Every one of us have the apps, whichever you're talking about right now. There is no more privileged services around technology. So technology democratization pretty much has put everybody on the same page. So it's very, very important for you to understand the user needs, create personas, because what works for one might not work for the other one, but everybody is on the same platform. So it's very, very important for you to understand this and say that how do we take advantage of democratization of technology? That's very important to understand, right? So remember, technology offers a fantastic platform for all of us, but at the same time is putting different types of people on the same platform. So a solution has to meet everybody's basic needs. Otherwise, it's not going to be successful. That's the second reason why design thinking is very important. And lastly, what has happened is the cost of failure is very low today. Earlier, if you fail in the process, you cannot go back. It's a costly affair. But today, design thinking process with the technologies, the cost of failure has become very less. So for example, it's like an app, right? If you have to develop an app today, you can develop a half-cooked app, release it to the customer, find out, if it's working fine. If not, you get back, you can rework on it and release it. It's just a piece of code which you're doing. It's not an hardware, right? So the cost of failure has become very less. So people have got an opportunity to innovate more, to iterate more, to do things in the cyclic way. That's the reason why design thinking has become more relevant right now. So 3 reasons. One is customer has moved to experience economy. 2, technology democratization has happened. 3rd, the cost of failure is less right now. So as I told you earlier, design thinking is a non-linear process. We start with empathizing, which means you go to the user and find out, understand what the problem is, what the real problem is, not what he or she is saying, but you observe, you do interviews, you understand the point of views and come out with a statement wherein you have empathized it, and then you define the problem statement. Once you define it, you ideate it. So ideating means you go divergent now, right? You start looking at all the different ideas which can solve this problem. Then you converge back, right? So in design thinking process, you need both divergent thinking and convergent thinking. This is the only technique which actually requires different kinds of thinking at different steps. So in the ideation phase, you want divergent thinking. Once you identify different options, then you start shortlisting the right option for you, again, based on the user feedback. Then you start converging. Then you come out with a prototype. If the prototype works with the customers, then yes, you go to the testing and then release the product. If it's not going, you can go back to empathizing or defining. The arrow marks clearly show that you can go from step 5 to step 1, step 4 to step 3, step 4 to step 2 at any given point in time. So it's a very, very iterative process. So you start with empathy, define, ideate, prototype, and test. In a typical problem solving statement process, you actually start with define, then go to ideate, prototype, and test. Here, the first step is empathy. So whatever you're doing right now, if you just add empathy as the first step, you actually will start doing the design thinking process. Remember that. Design thinking, again, I keep repeating this, it's about human-centered approach. It is option focused. You don't kill any options. Even if there is one person asking for that particular option, you explore that option. You don't kill an option because you got minimal votes for that. You don't do that. That's a typical thinking process, right? People say there are 30 people in the room, 25 people are asking for one, and 5 people are looking at the other option. In a typical problem solving, you might neglect those 5 people. But in a design thinking, all those 5 people matter. All their opinions matter. So you need to look at those opinions, and then it is possibility driven. So you can't kill an option just because you think it's not going to work out. You need to look at that option, go through the whole process, and then assume that there is a possibility of this option also. There might be 99% of the people aligning with one option. There is only one person who's looking at a different option. You still have to address that one person because that one person's option might be the right solution. So it's very, very iterative in nature. So remember this, and it is a mindset change you need to have. So you need to basically ensure that you change your mindset. You need to have a different mindset to be a design thinker. Now, I'll give you one example, right? This is what McDonald's, when they first came to India, released this Big Mac, which is a big hit in US, big hit. It didn't work in India. Primarily, I'm sure you all know why it wouldn't have worked. First, people didn't know what kind of meat it was. People thought it was beef. People said this is not something which I would not want to eat. I don't see any vegetables in this. I see vegetables which I don't understand in this, right? I don't understand the greens in this. It looks smaller. Why would I pay so much to eat this thing? The cheese doesn't look fresh. These are the things which came out when the Mac actually released it. They were very surprised. They said, this is the same ad which has worked across the world, but in India, it failed miserably. What was the ad they gave? This one. Very clearly, this is a vegetarian, this is chicken. Look at the name, Chicken Maharaja Mac. It connects with Indians, right? Grilled patty. It clearly tells it's grilled, it's a chicken patty. So non-vegetarians loved it. You see vegetables which you can recognize. You see fresh cheese. You see a huge size for vegetarians. And they know it's corn and cheese and nothing else. So suddenly this became a big hit. So it's very important. And how did they come up with this idea? They talked to the customers, right? They understood from the customer's perspective what was missing, what was something which they were doing wrong. There are many examples where the products have failed because they didn't even talk to the customers. It can be, the glasses, the fifth eye glasses. It can be the product called Newton. Many products around us where we can show the satellite phones, Iridium, multiple products which have started with a fantastic idea, but because they didn't follow the right steps of design thinking, they actually failed. The product failed miserably actually in the market. So there are two types of thinking, as I told you earlier, a business thinking or a logical thinking and design thinking. Now, is design thinking better than business thinking? Is design thinking better than logical thinking? Or the other way around? What is creative thinking then? So let me just spend 2 minutes on this. Remember, one doesn't replace the other. Depending on the situation, you have to decide whether a logical thinking is the right approach or a design thinking is the right approach. For example, if you're solving a puzzle, now puzzle means there are 10 steps to solve a puzzle. You are in the 5th step, which means there is 5 more steps to solve the puzzle. So it's the problem statement is very clear. The solution space is fixed, which means if you do the right combinations, you will still get the output. Then traditional thinking or logical thinking is the right way to solve this puzzle. But let's say you're solving a mystery. You suddenly go to a crime scene. You see somebody murdered. You see a knife lying next to it. You see a man running. Now, if you put logical thinking, you will say the man running is the murderer. Very wrong. So this is where design thinking comes. So whenever you're solving a puzzle, you apply logical thinking. Whenever you're solving a mystery, apply design thinking. That's the one-line definition of which one to apply where. So because mysteries are where there is no single piece of data. It's something which evolves with time. You keep asking more and more questions, you tend to get the answers. So, it's I don't know how many of you have seen the new serial which is coming, The Family Man Part 1 and Part 2. That's a clear case of mystery solving. You see how the person thinks. It is not a logical thinking. His close friend thinks logically. So his next step is what logically the other person would do. But what this person, the hero of the series thinks is he's trying to solve a mystery. So for him, no options is a bad option. He looks at each and every option and tries to fix this problem. So that's a classic example of design thinking. And design thinking is applied for mysteries. Logical thinking can be applied for puzzles. So if there are more data you need, let's look at this, right? If the underlying assumptions are rational or objective in nature, then business thinking is the right thing to do. If the underlying assumptions are subjective in nature, which means it depends on the person you're asking, then design thinking is the best. If you're looking at one best answer, business thinking or lateral thinking is the right thing. If you're looking at experimenting and trying to get a better answer, then design thinking is the best one. Business or linear thinking is more on planning. Design thinking is more on doing, because you iterate, you keep going through the cycles more and more to actually get the right solution. In business thinking, it's very logical. You use numerical models. In design thinking, it is experiential models and emotional insights. So it's about people again, right? in business thinking, you're very discomfort with uncertainty. You don't like uncertainty, right? In business thinking process, you want some assumptions to be made. Many of you researchers also, while working on a problem, the first thing you say is, this is the environment, this is my assumptions, this is the certainty in which I'm going to work with. Design thinking is not like that. They don't like status quo. They are looking for something new. So if you apply design thinking in research, you actually will get a much better results, much better insights than a logical thinking. But unfortunately, all our PhD students have been trained to follow a process. The first thing which is taught to him is, here is a research methodology. Start from step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. Don't even think of going back. How many of our researchers, including myself or all of you guys who have done your PhD, have dared to change the topic after 2 years? You will say, no, I don't want to change the topic because I have to redo the whole thing. That's the biggest mistake we have done, because we have started with the topic. We have done the interviews. After a year, after literature survey and after talking to the students and talking to the population we have and the surveys done, we feel that the problem statement itself is wrong. The hypothesis itself is wrong. Very few of us actually go back to that state and say, okay, I don't mind spending another 6 months, but let me rework on the problem statement. Very few of us do it. So that's where most of the outputs, right, of the research doesn't get used by anybody else later, because you only know the problem with your research. You only know the problem with what you have published. So because of lack of time, lack of support, whatever you want to call, because we are all lateral thinking researchers. The moment the researchers become design thinking, you will get wonderful outputs from India. You will get wonderful innovations from our students. So it's very, very important as guides to start pushing for design thinking process in research also, so that we can get better output from our students. Just a quick time check. So it is still 11:45, right?
It's 11:30, sir. You still proceed, sir. You have enough time. You have another 20 minutes to go.
Okay, so I'll finish it when it's 11:40. I'll open up for questions.
Yeah, sure.
So please feel free to ask any questions. And while I'm presenting, if you have any questions, put it in the chat window so that I can take that later. Okay. So in a nutshell, business thinking is, you have a problem, you have one solution. This business thinking. Design thinking is, you understand the problem first, right? Before you start addressing the problem, you understand the problem, which is empathizing. You look at multiple solutions. You test each of those solutions, experiment, and then come out with a solution. That's design thinking. This is a simple way of explaining the difference between business thinking and design thinking. But remember, design thinking is not solution for everything. If you're trying to solve a puzzle, business thinking is the best. If you're trying to solve a mystery, design thinking is the best. As I told you, in the steps of design thinking, we use both divergent thinking and convergent thinking, because we need to go out and seek different options, but at the same time, we need to converge. Otherwise, you'll never get an answer. So it's very, very important to use both divergent thinking and convergent thinking. The more divergent you go, more options you will see. So it's very, very important for you to go divergent thinking first, come with the convergent thinking. And it's a very, very iterative process. It starts with understanding, observing, point of view, ideating, prototyping, testing, storytelling, pilot, business model. So these are the different steps. Again, each of the process is defined differently by different people, but end of the day, it's about empathy or inspiration, ideation, and implementation and testing. So these are the 3 steps which we follow. We talked about this. So what is very, very important is putting the user or the customer at the center. Empathy is the most important thing in design thinking. So let me spend 5 minutes on empathy. So it's very, very important for all of us to understand what is the customer journey. Once the customer buys your product or solution, what would be the journey of the customer? Where are you? For example, let's say you're coming out with a solution to let the user buy insurance online. First step you should do is, what is the journey customer takes today? If I want an insurance, what does a person do? Do I go to the internet, find out what are the different options, or do I call an agent? What is that different steps I follow? That's called as a customer journey. So you need to map the customer journey. Say that this is what a customer does. Now, is it common for all the customers or different customers? Now, if you have a different customer, you need to put the journey of the other customer, come out with that. So that's customer journey. Then what is the experience the customer is facing? What kind of experience is he asking for? Both needs to be mapped. The last one is what is the value the customer is expecting or what you're offering to the customer. So when you look at all these three things, a journey of a customer, the experience of a customer, and the value the solution, the offer is offering or what he is wanting, then you can say the solution or the problem statements, what you're doing is customer centric. Now, when you look at customer centricity, you need to have empathy. You need to understand their feelings. You need to see their world. You need to appreciate them as human beings, not as subjects. You should never call your customer as a subject. They are people, real people. So it's always better to say a name for that person. Even if it is you don't want to disclose the person's name, give a fictitious name, but give a name. Don't say subject one, subject two. The moment you give subject one, subject two, you lost the empathy factor on that person. So please, even if I'm not saying you need to disclose the real names of the people in your service, but try to give a name and don't say subject one, college two. Name the college, name the area which the college is in, and then talk and communicate your understanding. Because sometimes you might see the customer, you might hear them, you might understand their feeling, but you might not have understood at all. So it's very, very important for you to communicate your understanding. So the customer says, yes, you have understood right. Your listening skills are correct. You have empathized with my problems. It's very, very important to do that. So to have good empathy, you need to have an open mind. You need to be observant, because most of the times customers do not tell you the whole story. They're just answering the questions you're asking. Now, if you don't ask the right questions, they will not answer. So it's very, very important for you to be observant. You need to be good listeners. And most importantly, you need to be curious, which means that will help you ask more questions, right? So it's like a muscle you flex. To build strong muscles, you must exercise. So to build empathy in you, you need to practice it. Empathy will not come to you just because you think you're customer centric. You need to keep practicing it, then empathy comes naturally. To get the right empathy, you need to immerse, which means you need to experience what your user is experimenting. You need to observe, as I told you, because the user might not tell everything what he or she wants, and you need to engage with the person. So if you directly employ it to your research methodologies, for example, this will help you do the right interaction with your sample customers. It will help you the moment you immerse in that customer experience, observe and engage, you get good answers. You get the right input from the customers. So it's very, very important. So empathizing is not just understanding the problem, but it's very, very important to understand the people and to know what users think and feel, not just what they think, but also what they feel. It's experience what users do and say. Sometimes they just say it, they don't, if you're not a good observer, you'll not see what they're doing. So it's very, very important for you to understand that also, and to see the problem with a fresh set of eyes. That is empathy. So I'll give you one quick example of what happened. So there was this NGO in US, right, which came to a village in Rajasthan. And they looked at this village and said, these women were carrying, for a water. All the women in the village used to walk almost 5 kilometers one way, early in the morning, go fetch the water from the well, which was there outside the village, walk back. By the time they come back to the house, it's almost 11:30. So it's 10 kilometers walk. And the maximum they could carry was 2 pots of water. So this NGO came and said, this is not happening. This is very unfortunate that the people have to walk 5 kilometers. So let's, invest and build a well in the village. They spent crores of rupees because they had to find the right place and experimented and finally built a well wherein they got the water for the village. The villagers didn't like the idea. What do you think might have happened? Why do you think the villagers didn't like it? Anybody?
So they might find that the exercise of walking 5 kilometers and coming back home will be
Exercise.
missed. Yeah.
Okay. You felt the exercise was missed.
Yes.
Anybody else? You can type it.
Taste of the water.
So they may feel that they would love to test the water, maybe that religious thinking.
Okay. So there might be some religious things before we could do. Somebody said they were not, surveyed enough. Somebody said taste of water was not good, so they didn't use it. Somebody said they missed socialization. Actually, that's correct. So what happened was, if they said we stayed back at home, we ended up working more on the fields. So we are okay walking one way, but we don't want to stay at home. And it also gave them time for socializing, right? They walked, they didn't see, people looked at it as walking, but actually they were talking. For 5 kilometers, they're talking, 5 kilometers, they're talking back. They're complaining about everything around them, but they're very happy. That's the time they got for themselves. And suddenly this well messed up the whole problem, because it not only affected the women, it also affected the men, because they expected the women to be out for the 3 hours and suddenly everybody's at home. They didn't like it. It's like the work from home option right now, right? So it's very, very important to understand from the customer's view. And sometimes they don't answer. You need to observe, because if you ask this question to the person, she will not tell you that she wants to socialize. But if you walk with them, you will realize that, hey, they're actually talking. They're happy. They're smiling. You don't see the same pain when you think about it. If I just tell you somebody has to walk 5 kilometers to fetch water, suddenly you will feel, oh, bad for it. But actually, if you walk with them, you might suddenly say, actually, it's not a bad experience at all. So it's very, very important for you not just ask them, but to observe and get immersed in their experience. Only then you understand the problem. That's what I'm trying to get here. And another example, some pictures I found on the web. A lot of times people think I come out with a solution, it's very intuitive. People will understand how to use it. And look at this dog, right? Unless you clearly tell the user how to use it, customers don't understand. So you don't assume anything for the customer. So it's very, very important for you to be very clear with your solution. And the second picture talks about the design and the user experience. You can have a road here, but at the end of the day, if the user is using a path as an implementation, it is better to put the road on that path which the user uses and not creating a new road, because the user is not going to use that, right? So it's very, very important to understand the difference between a design and a user experience. And as more the design overlaps with the user experience, you will get a customer using your solutions. So finally, if you really ask me, what is the difference? So many different thinking processes we are talking about here. This is a good example of summarizing the different thinking process. So if the solution is known and the problem is also known, then lean thinking is enough. Good enough, actually. So for example, you want to reduce waste. How do you do it? You know the problem, you know the solution actually. So the lean thinking process will help you get the answer. Let's say you know the solution, but you don't know the question itself, problem itself. Then critical thinking works better there, right? There can be many examples here to understand what is the problem actually which you're trying to solve. Lateral thinking, on the other hand, is where the problem is known, but the solution is not known. So that's where the lateral thinking helps. And this is something by Edward Bono. Most of you have used it. Design thinking is where you don't know the problem, you don't know the solution. Now, let me give you some examples. Lean thinking, efficiency of parking spots in Bangalore. You want to understand which parking spots can be given to vehicles. How can we improvise it? You know the problem, you know the solution. You just have to use the technology to help you do this. So that's the whole idea of lean thinking. And what is critical thinking? Example, critical thinking is something where the solution is known, the problem is unknown. How do you ensure people wear helmets? Wearing a helmet is a solution. Why are people not understanding the problem then? So that's something which we need to look into. Lateral thinking, where solution is unknown, but the problem is known. How do you make people use carpool? How do you make sure people share the cars which they get to the office? Solution is unknown, but the problem is very clear. Design thinking is, How do you motivate people to use public transport? You don't know the solution. You don't know the problem also here. How do you make Delhi safer for women? If you try to start with that statement, you don't know the solution. You don't know the problem also. So these are different examples of these different thinking process. And design thinking is a fantastic tool to apply when you don't know the problem, you don't know the solution. Okay, so remember this picture. A lot of things will be easier for you. So if you put all the things what I just talked about, it's about empathy. Start with empathy, go to the define, go ideate it, prototype it, test it. And remember, it is not a waterfall model. This is an iterative model. This is a cyclic process. It's not something where you go from define to ideate, ideate to prototype, prototype to test. You keep moving from one step to the other step in a cyclic way. Okay, so it is about empathizing. You look at a subject as a person. You don't. If you want to be a good design thinker, you need to empathize. You need to improve your listening skills. You need to listen with intent. You need to observe with purpose. You need to defer your judgment. Don't answer while you're talking to the person. You listen to the person. And don't reserve your judgment. Don't say it. Use the 1:5 rule, which means 1 minute of talking, 5 minutes of listening. Finally, focus on human. Focus on the subject, not on the object, right? So if the question is, how can I make the pen better? Look at the different options. Design thinking starts with a different question itself. Why do you need a pen? Who is using it? What kind of person is using it? When are you using it? So you ask very different questions for the same problem. But a linear thinker will say, okay, I'll make the pen better by giving a better nib, better color, better size, etc., etc. So never focus on the object, focus on the subject. Finally, think with your hands. We are very, very good as researchers, as teachers, to think from our brains all the time. As a design thinking practice, right? You need to think with your hands, because unless you think from your hands, you will not be able to come out with a good solution. Because in India, we have completely compartmentalized right now. We have engineers who don't know how to fix a furniture. We don't know how to fix vehicles today. We are very bad at using hands. We have labs, of course, but none of them actually give you the right skills which engineers should have. So always think with your hands if possible. And develop a T-shaped personality, which means while you are getting more and more expertise, also work outside your core area. Don't just focus on your functional area. Functional area is very, very important. Absolutely no doubt about it. You need to go deeper and deeper in your functional area or in your discipline or in your specialty. At the same time, go breadth also. We need both breadth and depth. So there is a statement which says the market needs tall people, which means you go deeper. But actually what you need is a fat and tall person today. You cannot be short person also, fat and short. You cannot be tall and thin. You need a mix of both of these things. So empathy is something which is very, very important for you to get the expertise. Let me skip this. So how do you apply in education? Process is the same. You start with empathy, you interpret, you imagine, you plan, you test it. Same thing you can apply in education. The first thing is, any course we are delivering, any program we are doing, think of the learner first. Look at the needs of the learner and then start with interpretation, imagination of the program, planning the program and testing the program. And start with, let's say you imagine the learner, talk to the learner, find out if this kind of program, will it help or not? Be prepared to change the whole program structure based on the learner. If you are able to do that, then actually you can apply design thinking in education very, very effectively. Now, how can you apply design thinking in research? If you start with empathizing and then get into the next step of definition and ideating, you have employed design thinking in research very effectively. The only request I have is try to come out of your linear approach. Never have step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. The more you do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, which is linear in nature, you lose the essence of the subject, which is the customer or the learner. So whenever you're doing research, whenever you are guiding a student on research, spend more time yes, you need to spend a lot of time on literature survey, but at the same time, ask the person to spend more time on the final impact your research is going to happen, right? Say you're doing a research on a particular segment, ask them to go and interview and talk to them as much as possible before they come out with a problem statement. So that's very, very important, right? So flip the whole thing. Don't wait for the survey to happen at the last. Start with the survey itself. Let the person talk to the audience and understand the problem statement better. Now, how do we come out with the problem statement in research? You do research, do literature survey. You do research gap analysis because people have not done research in this area. So this is my research area. Very, very linear thought process, right? If your literature survey is not good enough, then you might have ended up with a problem statement which doesn't make sense at all. The best way to do it is, yes, you have to do the literature survey, but at the same time, ask the user, ask the student to go and start talking to people and understand the real problem. That is where the problem statement will be correct, and then go through the regular process. I think that will the best way to apply design thinking in research. I'll not get into this. I think we're running out of time. All my slides are in SlideShare. All the references which I have is kept here. If you go to my SlideShare, this is the address of my SlideShare, slideshare.net/Shivu-Koteshwar. You will see all my presentations. So if you need anything, feel free to reach out to me at shivu.koteshwar@gmail.com. If you want to connect to me, I have 2 LinkedIn profiles. Please connect to this profile, because the other profile I use it for Synopsys only for my other career. So if any one of you want to reach out to me, please feel free to reach out to me here. So I think we have 10 minutes. So if you have any questions, I'll take it.
Respected delegate participants, please post your questions or any queries in chat box, or you can also unmute and pose a question to a resource person.
So
Sir, there is a question. Are there any certifications for design thinking? I mean, certification course they meant.
Many are there. So if you go to Coursera, there are multiple programs on design thinking for innovation, design thinking for entrepreneurship and business. I've already done both the courses in Coursera, which is a good introduction to design thinking. Apart from that, there are multiple post-graduation courses right now, which many colleges are offering. IIT Bombay is offering, ISB is offering, IIM is offering right now. I am the resource person for IIM right now. So we are coming out with a program for that. I have many private universities actually offering a design thinking certification program. And I think it's a good thing, which, I definitely encourage all of you actually start with the workshop on design thinking. I'm sure you'll have researchers who might be giving you a topic on design thinking. Ask your researchers to conduct a workshop or a conference in your colleges on design thinking. So that way you'll attract more and more papers. You'll have more students coming and teaching. I think that's the best way to do it. And I don't know how many of you know this. Coursera, almost all the courses are free. Only for certification you have to pay money. But some courses, if you do the program in 7 days, certification is also free. So if you have time, if you have so much of bandwidth, if you want to do the course for free and also get the certification, there are options in Coursera. So good courses are there. And the best courses on design thinking is usually from Stanford, because the whole process of design thinking was invented by Stanford and IDEO. These are the 2 companies which started this.
So there is another question. How can we apply design thinking to improve our education system that you've already addressed?
I have addressed this, but again, just to summarize the couple of questions I saw in education is, make sure you start with the customers. Make sure you start with empathy. The moment you do that, then a lot of things becomes easier. So there is a process. I mean, if you go to the website and just type design thinking steps, you will get the process, you will get the frameworks. There are multiple tools available. You can look at some of these tools and see what is right for you, right? So I skipped that slide because I didn't want to get into too much of technicality, but the slides has it. So if somebody is interested, they can look at the tools which is out there on design thinking. And each one of them, will take half an hour for you to understand and go a little bit deeper into each one of those things. So this is the one, right? This is the one. So if you see the right side, these are the tools which is there, right? There are visualization tools. There are journey mapping, which basically helps you understand the customer journey, value chain analysis, mind mapping, brainstorming, concept development. There are multiple tools which is out there, and all these resources are freely available on the web.
So with the design thinking, how can we improve the current supply of vaccine and its current problem of vaccine and its supply?
Very political questions. I don't want to get into that. But see, it's not about vaccine or anything. It's about user. You need to look at, and I think they have employed the same process right now. Initially, they tried to let the states, run the show, but eventually they found out that it is not catering to the different users in the country. Finally, the government decided to actually make it as a user-centric and said that we will run the whole. So anything, I mean, 1 minute is not enough to answer that question. Any problem you have can be easily solved with design thinking. And especially this vaccination drive is a classic design thinking case and not a linear thinking case. There's not something based on the linear thinking you can solve the problem, because you need to really understand the problem the customer are facing. It's easy to send the vaccination to the centers. How do you make sure that the customer is coming from their houses or from the villages and get the vaccination? If you have not thought through that process, you'll be wasting the vaccination, which we have already seen, because you need to store the vaccination also in the right place, in the right time. If you don't do it, logistics can become a nightmare. So people have initially didn't think through the whole process. That's where the problem came. So definitely it can be applied. There's no doubt about that. Use of design thinking in health sector, same thing. If you do not think about the customer experience, customer journey, customer empathy, you might be coming out with a product which the customer might not be interested to use. So it might be a very innovative product, but if it is not intuitive for the customer, it's not something which the customer really wants it, he or she will not be using it. So it's very, very important to start with the customer. Oximeter right now, which you put it on your thumb and it measures the SpO2, is the biggest selling product in the healthcare sector right now, right? ECG machine used to be the biggest healthcare sector market previously, but right now the oximeter is the most important thing. Now, when you look at the oximeters also, the earlier oximeters used to be very complicated. What you get today is just you plug it in, people understand. They understood that common men have started using oximeter. So the designs have changed right now. They look at the customer experience and say, okay, we can't make it so complicated, so we just have to put it like this. And the numbers also doesn't make sense for the customer anymore, because let's say 92 it says, I don't know what 92 means. 89 it says, I don't know. All they need to know is low, high, and medium. So if it is high, no problem. If it is low, this one, and there is an oximeter which actually has red, green, yellow right now, nothing else. You put it, it shows green, that means you're healthy. It means yellow, that means please watch out. It means red, go to the hospital. Simple, right? Because the user doesn't want to know the numbers because it gets complicated. Earlier, oximeters was used only by the doctors, so they needed exact numbers.
So another question, how can we use this design thinking in HRM, human resource management?
See, human resources in general is human-centered. So advantage is most of the things what we talk about in HR follows 80% of what we talked about in this design thinking process. And again, I've told you earlier also, design thinking is not a new thing. It's something which we all have been doing it. It just puts a framework around whatever we've been practicing. So it's not something new we are introducing to the world. This is something which you and I might be doing it for years now. But it just helps you put a structure around whatever we were doing so that we can train more people. Because things can come very intuitive for all of us with experience. But sometimes a new person who comes on board might not follow the same process. So for him, it's like a rule book. You just give him and say, okay, this is the toolkit you use. So he will go step by step. That's the whole idea of design thinking.
One more question, sir. Will IT culture support the design thinking mindset?
Definitely. In fact, all the companies have started adopting design thinking. In Synopsys, for example, I'm one of the champions of design thinking. We are conducting multiple programs around design thinking to ensure that engineers really understand what is a customer persona, what is a customer experience, what is a customer journey, because these things are the initial thing which we need to start with. So we are conducting multiple programs around this.
So in one more question, how can we use this in sales?
Again, see, most of the times, if you look at the right sales guy, you go to a small shop, the sari shop. if you go to the website today and do a e-commerce and buy sarees, for me, for example, I'm not just trying to say women versus men here. I also am not comfortable buying shoes online, for example. I would like to go to a store and actually experience the whole, experience of wearing the shoes, using it, and then buying it. Women, for example, very few of them buy sarees online. Dresses they buy everything else. Sarees, they say, I want to go to the shop. Why is it so important? Because you go to the shop, the salesperson over there actually doesn't show you the sarees which is selling. The first question he'll say is, sir, madam, there is one saree here, which is so unique, it fits you right away. What is he doing? He's not concentrating on the product at all. He's concentrating on the user. He's looking at the person sitting in front of the person and saying, he's empathizing with the customer and saying, because he looks at the color of the woman, he looks at the size of the woman. He actually has literally found out the right saree which might suit you. Because sometimes you can't ask. You feel a little bit reserved to ask those questions, but the good salesman actually understands just looking at you and gives you the right product out there. What has he done? He has actually understood the customer persona. So in sales also, more and more you focus the first question, the first 5%, 10% of your time on customer, personas of the customer, then fit the product for that customer. Then you're applying design thinking process. We might be doing it again, but again, this is something which we will see more and more moving forward.
Hope we have addressed all the questions, sir. There are no more questions in chat box. So
Yeah.
I express my sincere thanks to you, sir. We really had a very knowledge enriching session. There is an excellent quote by Albert Einstein. We can't solve problem by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. So we understood that design thinking begins with empathy, innovation, and iteration, sir. So really, we had a very fruitful session today. Actually, we were wondering how design thinking is useful for our faculties, but we understood the real funda of this, sir, now. And we use this design thinking in our curriculum delivery too. And the three key takeaways of this session are like design thinking is a customer-centric or human-centric process. It's a mind shift and it's a toolkit. Thank you, sir. Thank you. We had a very wonderful session today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All the very best.
Now we have come to the end of this session. Now I take a privilege of delivering and conveying vote of thanks to all the delegates, participants of today's session. Let us raise up and be thankful. For if we didn't learn a lot today, at least we learned a little. And if we didn't learn a little, at least we didn't get sick. And if we got sick, at least we didn't die. So this is a wonderful gratification quote by Gautama Buddha. So we should be thankful for whatever we learned today. First and foremost, I extend my heartfelt thanks to our dynamic leader, Dr. B. Chandrasekhara, Chief Patron of this program and Principal of Government First Grade College, Vijayanagar, Bengaluru, for motivating us to organize this beautiful session. I, on behalf of GFGC Vijayanagar and Organizing Committee, express my sincere thanks to our chief guest and today's resource person, Dr. Shivananda R. Koteshwar. Despite his busy schedule, has found some time to share his valuable knowledge on introduction and application of design thinking in teaching and research. Really, we had a very beautiful session today, sir. Thank you once again. I also thank Dr. Shubha, patron of this program and IQAC coordinator of GFGC Vijayanagar. I would also thank Professor Manjula, convener of this program, and also HOD of Management Department, who directed us to organize this program. I express my sincere thanks to Professor Kishore Kumar, organizing secretary of this program, who has put his tremendous and immense effort to organize this session. I wholeheartedly thank Professor Pallavi, coordinator of this program, for smoothly coordinating this session. Now, I would like to extend a big thanks to our delegate participants who have actively participated in this session and made this session a great success. At last, I extend my sincere thanks to all the teaching and non-teaching staffs of GFGC Vijayanagar, Bengaluru, for all your support and coordination. Thank you. Thank you, one and all. There is an announcement for tomorrow's session, participants. We have 2 sessions tomorrow. First session is on case study based teaching by Arvind Jaikumar, and it commences at 10:30. Request all of you to join session at 10:25 a.m. There is a second section is on global talent management by an international resource person, Beena Kumar from London. It starts at 2 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Kindly join to session 5 minutes early. Thank you. Thank you for your attention and participation. Have a nice and great day. Sir, shall we wind up?
Thank you, Madhu Madam. Thanks to you as well.
Thank you, sir.
Shivu sir, thank you very much for joining
Thank
us.
you.
Sure. I've sent the link on my LinkedIn on the
Yes.
chat window. You can send it to all if they want.
Okay, sir. I'll send it in our group as well.
So, sir, that was a quite informative and thought-provoking session, sir. Actually, we all organizers were like thinking how design thinking is going to connect with the teaching pattern. So it was really, enlightening.
Thank you.
Very informative.
Thank you.
so much.
Once again, wholeheartedly thank you, sir. Very beautiful session.
Thanks.
And there was some issue with the Zoom. The site is running slow. Some of the participants couldn't join. They sent me personal message. They got delayed to join almost like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. There was an issue from the Zoom site. The site is running slow. But still, we are extremely sorry for that. All the technical glitches. Thank you once again. See you tomorrow. Till then, take care. Be safe. Madam, you can end.
Okay, sir.